For the first time in Florida Panthers history, they take a 1-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup Final. Despite the Edmonton Oilers controlling play, it was Sergei Bobrovsky who stole the show.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Sunday, June 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you follow me on X at Mondoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So after a week off for the Florida Panthers, finally back in action, all the anticipation, media day, you name it, and how raucous the crowd was with Mike McDaniel banging the drum prior to the game, and the Florida Panthers just really, for them, it was the Edmonton Oilers really controlling play really from start to finish for them. But I mean, really what it came down to was the Panthers picking and choosing their spots to convert, and it really happened as they score once in every period throughout the night from Amerant Bank Arena in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. And Sergei Bobrovsky, a 32-save shutout for him to get the win. And the Florida Panthers take a 1-0 series lead in Game 1 of this Stanley Cup Final in this best-of-7 series. But joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, I know it is not a Friday. We are going into a Sunday, but we had to switch a little bit of the scheduling here on the show. But making up for the lack of a Friday episode, he is doing post-game for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, and he was also at the arena tonight. It is Nich Fairbanks. He is back here on the show. Nich, welcome to the show, my friend, after a 1-0 series lead for Los Gatos.
So my voice is going to be really rough. I am so sorry to the people listening to this and even watching, but that's just how much this game meant. The crowd was into it from the start. The Stanley Cup, or the Cup, I should say, made an appearance. John Acosta, sang "Oh Canada" beautifully, fired a lot of guys up, and Sergei Bobrovsky continues to write his tale into being one of the great goaltenders of his era. So can't say enough about what happened tonight and how the team stuck together to pull out a win, but I'm pretty sure this will be just a small portion of what to expect in the coming days.
Yeah, very small of what to expect. I mean, you think about how it's funny because even going into the series, I spoke about the metrics for the Edmonton Oilers, how they were at 49% Corsi while the Florida Panthers were at 55. But hey, everything resets in the Stanley Cup Final when it comes to just the final stage. I mean, we even spoke about how the Panthers can play all different styles of play for them. I mean, really, even we even spoke about it in the previous series against the Rangers, how the Panthers keep things a little tight, and here and there you're going to see your breakaway opportunities. I mean, the one by Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Matthias Janmark, Adam Henrique had one too. I'm in different spurts but even then, Sergei Bobrovsky stood tall in it. But I mean, with the Florida Panthers' ability to force them east-west, and even when they were coming back to the backhand with McDavid driving up and then bringing it back, I mean, the gap control was really great. The second chance opportunities weren't there for the Edmonton Oilers. That was really the other thing. The Oilers were peppering the shots, but I mean, the Panthers' ability to still get there and clear the zone, or at least get it to the wall, so at least battle it out and get a quick breakout for them too. I mean, the credit to the Oilers, their forecheck was going on the night too. So and the Panthers was just really about weathering the storm.
Definitely. I mean, you could probably say the first 2 minutes of this game, you saw Edmond come out and they came out hard and they came out fast. You kind of wish that Bobrovsky would not play the puck as much as he did
Yeah.
this game in the back of the net, because that was a little scary. But he did what he had to do. And then you had that boarding call that was missed on Adam Henrique, who boarded
Oh yeah.
OEL. That should have been called, but I guess they're going to let the boys play this series. Um, but the Panthers were opportunistic. They did exactly what Edmonton did to Dallas. They didn't shoot a lot, I guess, or they didn't have the chance to, but they put the puck in the back of the net when they had their chances. So, um, the other point I could make is that you said the gap control. I would probably say the first period, the gap control was almost non-existent because of the breakaways, and that has to do with how Florida, how their style is and how the defense plays and how the forwards were not really getting back to help them out. So hopefully they can clean up a little bit of that between game one and going into Monday into game two.
Yeah, and every game has its own story coming into it, and also just how momentum just doesn't necessarily carry from one game to the next, especially with all the 2-day gaps that we're going to see
Mm-hmm.
throughout the traveling cities. Which once again, I am for the as far as the players, but I mean even for the Panthers, I mean the odd man rushes given up were mostly for one of them was on the Mikhail Montour pairing, and then the other one was the OEL one. The Yanmark one was with the OEL Kulikov pairing, which I'm gonna get back to that. What happened after that Yanmark breakaway opportunity is something in segment number 2, but also the little bit lackadaisical in breaking out, and also how the Edmonton Oilers had the half walls pinned to keep the puck into their zone too. So credit to them on how they were able to do that too, and just continue to pepper shots for Sergei Bobrovsky. Also for the Florida Panthers, this was the third time they were outshot in the postseason. Previously, they were 0-2 coming into this one, so a
Mm.
little bit a different type of win for the Florida Panthers too here, and also with something that Jacob and I spoke about a few days ago, even before the series, is if the Oilers went to that to Draisaitl going up to that McDavid line, there's an opportunity where that could be really where the Florida Panthers could feast. I mean, look at just look at natural stat trick at 5-on-5 for the Oilers. There only one line outshot the opposition by more than one, and both of
Hmm.
them happened to be McDavid lines. One of them with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins there, and the other one with Draisaitl. Every single one, if a line did outshot the opposition, it was only by one, no more than that, too, on the night too. So so really for the Florida Panthers, I mean, and the shot distribution for the Panthers, even in their little opportunities, were more spread out, while you knew who was getting the puck on the other side for the Oilers.
For sure. And that's all the Oilers have, to be honest with you. I mean, their third line can't match up against the Lundell line, and the fourth line, we have a fifth line. It's really, going to be the depth challenge that they're going to have to overcome. They went to Draisaitl and McDavid in the second period. That just shows you how desperate they got, and Florida was able to start bottling them up a little bit. We'll see how that trend goes. Maybe Knobloch will actually kind of push that off to a little bit more towards the third period, so he can keep his guys fresh and really try to, I guess, take advantage or be advantageous later in the game when it's needed, instead of expending all their energy earlier in the game.
Yeah, and also advantageous, and also we spoke about the blue line for the Edmonton Oilers on that on that quick out by Alexander Barkov going up the ice on the give and go. Credit to Ekblad on that quick out before, even though he didn't get an assist on the play with that give and go with Reinhart, and then Darnell Nurse drawing to Reinhart to allow that Barkov that return feed to Verhaeghe for goal number 10, and then also that forecheck that Sam Bennett had on Cody Ceci to help Evan Rodrigues get that one. And just Evan Rodrigues, just this is the reason why you signed him. He played with Reinhart in Buffalo, Montour, McKinnon, Sidney Crosby. I mean, you get that type of guy for these type of moments for in the Stanley Cup Final, and all the experience too. So that's another thing but really for the Panthers, Sergei Bobrovsky just standing tall and for the Panthers. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about our 3 stars of the game and when we thought the game was won. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And summertime means baseball, the NBA, and the Stanley Cup Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP, Conn Smythe, to who's winning, and going to hit one out of the park. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Sunday on a Game 1 post-game edition of the show. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Back with Nich Fairbanks here on not a Friday, here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a game 1 post-game edition of the show, where Nick is kind enough to join me after being in the arena tonight for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. So 3 stars of the game for me for this one. Sam Bennett is number 3. Also, something I noticed with the Sam Bennett line, and something that the broadcast also pointed out, is they kind of did a switcheroonie with Bennett matching up with that McDavid line and actually having Barkov with the Draisaitl line right before Draisaitl went on that top line. So that there's a little bit of mix up with that, with who is going to cover who. And honestly, benefit of having the last change where you're able to get those matchups necessary. And also Sam Bennett, the amount of hits he had on the night, it wasn't necessarily highlight reel hits, but you saw him definitely getting in on the physicality. And honestly, this is what we're talking about for these type of moments, when you get to the Stanley Cup Final. Playoff Sam, 11 hits on the night. Evan Rodrigues, a big goal to extend the lead to 2. Honestly, at the time, I thought even though it was insurance for them, I didn't think that was yet enough for the Panthers to win them, which we'll get a little bit later in the segment. But number 1 is Sergei Bobrovsky, second shutout of the postseason, 32 of 32, oldest goaltender to record a shutout in the Stanley Cup Final. The last one since Patrick Waugh in 2001 for the Colorado Avalanche against the New Jersey Devils. So some company that Sergei Bobrovsky is definitely in. So who are your 3 stars of the game for the Florida Panthers for Game 1, Nick?
I'm going to start with star number 1, Sergei Bobby Bobrovsky. Second is going to be Mr. Alexander Barkov, because although you may not have noticed him on the ice on the television broadcast, he was all over McDavid. He was basically taking on every assignment that he could, and McDavid was basically kept to the outside most of the game. So hats off to him, and he got 2 assists, this game. And then third star is going to be somebody who we really haven't talked about a lot this postseason, but I think he had a fantastic game, was Eetu Luostarinen. And I think he was rewarded with an empty netted goal tonight. But on the penalty kill, and then also with him, Lundell and Tarasenko, they actually had a lot of the possession time in the offensive zone. They're winning battles against the boards, and Eetu was the main reason for them actually keeping the offensive pressure alive for the Panthers, and kind of taking away the pressure from the defense and Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah, their Corsi for percentage was over 73% for the night too. Even though they were outshot too, and the Edmonton Oilers were getting bodies in front, it doesn't tell the whole story. Just about really how even though the Panthers, you run a little bit of time off the clock, when you're leading. But for that line, getting those opportunities there when you're mostly in your own end, a different type of game that the Florida Panthers played. too. So that's another thing for them. So just about about managing that when you knew, even going into the Stanley Cup Final, we knew that the depth advantage was going to be for the Florida Panthers over the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe top end talent for advantage Oilers, but still through one game, so far so good. But again, like we said at the beginning, this is not to expect this type of game game in and game out through the Stanley Cup Final. Only one game through and Barkov, that line outshot 23-8. Also, they only had one shot attempt in the first period, and that shot happened to be a goal, that Barkov line too. So hey, once again, taking advantage of the opportunities when it's there on that goal, on that first one, for the Panthers to get it to 1-0, and really, and the fact that inner slot was the high danger that Bobrovsky was facing. Of the 26 saves that he made, 13 of them were high danger after 2 periods too. So the Oilers had more power plays, more breakaways, more high danger, more time in the slot. But hey, sometimes goaltending is part of the deal here. So it's Bobrovsky definitely earning his 10 million and giving us 10 million reasons to smile on the night. Also, the Panthers were really responsible for when it was the non-long change period, when the puck was near the blue line and throwing a check. And even if the puck trickled out of the zone, I saw 2 occasions, with one with Carter Verhaeghe and the other one with Kevin Stenlund too, about how quick they're able to get. So they're not extending over long and having long shifts even in their end, even though there were times where it was hard to break out, especially for that top line too. But the moment where I thought, okay, now shifting gears, for the moment that we thought the game was won, that after that Janmark breakaway, and there was that little scuffle and the coincidental minors, the two guys who went off the ice for the Panthers on that coincidental minors. One of them was OEL, not really a guy who you spend too much time killing penalties. And then Kevin Stenlund, a big one for the Panthers. And then the Panthers took a penalty after that with Sam Bennett too. So, and that was the power play where a whole bunch of chances for the Edmonton Oilers. There's one especially where Ryan Nugent-Hopkins missed the net, and Bob was going for the pad stack save too on the penalty kill. And what a save that would have been if it actually landed there. But at first I thought it was a save, but replay showed it missed the net. But still, that was the most dangerous power play that the Edmonton Oilers had all night there. So that was midway through the second, when the Panthers had a 2-0 lead. Even though there's still a little bit part of me creeping in that's saying, okay, this lead is still not safe. Looking back at everything, I can't pinpoint to anywhere outside of that specific kill for the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's actually when I started feeling a lot better about where this game was headed. And just because honestly, I felt that Draisaitl went down a little bit easy, because a few seconds before, Bennett actually tried throwing a hit at him. He hit Draisaitl, but Draisaitl just flicked him off like it didn't happen. And then a few seconds later, he goes down for a cross check. Like, come on, man, you're like much bigger and probably a little bit stronger than Sam Bennett, but okay, I guess that's what we're going to do tonight. The fact that Florida was able to kill that penalty off without Bennett, without Stenlund, Barkey, Reinhardt, I think Lundell was out there. They did the job, and Bob just stood on his head again. And I think from there, you could just feel confident that, hey, we're getting this done, and it's just not Edmonton's night tonight. So, hats off to the penalty kill this game.
Yeah, really for them, they had a great night on them. I mean, we saw also on the other end for the Edmonton Oilers, where they went to the box also for an interference too, for another
Corey Perry
on
Katy
that
Perry.
one.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, so I forget that's the nickname that we gave him at one point. A few, but also, I mean, you think about for this one, I mean, 30 straight penalties that the Edmonton Oilers killed. Panthers are on a 35 of 37 run on the penalty kill too. So, I mean, I'm not expecting the whole series to be played at 5-on-5, but when you're seeing how the Panthers are able to counter that so far in game one. I mean, that's gotta be a lot of feel good for the Panthers just going into the next game. And also, they've been really comfortable too, just defending dump and chase. I mean, a lot of times, especially in the Rangers series, they were getting them to dump at the end of shifts too. I mean, so for the Panthers, I mean, it's just really the difference for them in just getting a quick battle out, and even like we mentioned earlier, second chances even to poke it near the boards. I mean, gotta love the effort consistently that we see from the Panthers and just how they're able to and once again, health is a big contribution to how they're able to just get the bigger bodies. I mean, Lawrence, I mean,
Yeah.
he's a lot bigger. He's a lot bigger in person. I mean, he doesn't look big on TV, but when you see him in person, I'm like, man, this guy is huge, and that's
The big boy. Yeah.
liner for him too. So that's really for the Panthers. I mean, that's a big part of what they do when the style for them changes. So we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to ask the question if whether or not this is sustainable for the Panthers if they want to continue with how them being 3 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup, and now the Edmonton Oilers feeling good about their game too after that. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Sunday, June 9th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Recapping game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, where the Florida Panthers defeat the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 3-0 from Emirates Bank Arena to take a 1-0 series lead. And also, the Florida Panthers once again have not lost a game in regulation when leading. So 67-0-4. That's their current record. And now teams who have won game 1 go on to win the series 76% of the time. So that so far so good for the Panthers too. So let's discuss more about we knew that Edmonton was controlling play, peppered Bobrovsky with shots, but I mean, I can't expect this to be the whole series for this one. I mean, even after game 1 of the Rangers series, I was saying, okay, I'm not expecting the Florida Panthers to control the play the whole time, and that was a 3-0 shutout. And then it still happened throughout the series too. So I'm just trying to lower my expectations too for this one, for the series. But I mean, Connor McDavid even spoke about just the puck luck wasn't on the side of the Oilers. They like how they played. But how are you feeling now after this one? Because there's going to be a response. There's going to be a counterpunch. And also, Maurice had a quote saying this after the game that, quote, "We're going to find out how much better we can get," close quote, after this game.
So that feeds exactly into the idea that I have that Panthers are not a good team when there's rest. Like there's an extended time of rest that they have. I mean, if you look at the first round going into the second round against Boston, that game 1 was a disaster. They looked terrible. They got blown out, and they came back in the second game and they did exactly what Boston did to them in the first game. So the fact that they were able to play not as well in this game and still come out with a win against probably the best player in the league right now says a lot. And I think, as Maurice alluded to, is we're going to see how good that they can be. And, if Connor McDavid and Draisaitl were not able to do, what they needed, then that's kind of a scary precedent to think about. If Florida can get better, then what chance outside of a few power plays do the Oilers have? To be honest, I mean, not saying that they're a bad team at all, not taking anything away from what they've done this season, but they're not built the same way as Florida, and they don't have that experience. So they're going to play how they think they should play, and Florida can play any way at all, and they'll be in control. So it just really comes down to, again, what kind of team are we going to see on Tuesday, and are they going to be much better?
Yeah, and While you were saying your statement, I was looking up Sergei Bobrovsky's game logs. He has as many games where he's faced shots in the 30s as he has in the teens. 4 each.
Ooh.
But
Well,
also, let's talk more about that. That means that's just the ability of the goaltender to just be ready for any situation that comes. I mean, let's what was the conversation even throughout going into the Stanley Cup Final? Oh, the Panthers are protecting Sergei Bobrovsky more. He's not carrying them. But also there's a little bit of chatter here and there about, oh, this is probably going to be the series that Bobrovsky is going to have to be his best yet. We saw 2023 postseason Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, we were talking about before that Vegas series. The leader going into the Stanley Cup Final is Bob or Kachuk last year going into it.
for the Conn Smythe, yeah.
For the Conn Smythe last year. But I mean, we saw signs of that this year. I'm not saying he's the leader. Right now, I still think it's Barkov on the Panthers side of things. But we saw that sign where he's on top of the crease, able to get the glove down even through with lots of bodies, and even that one save where it was just under his pad and got the whistle too. That's another thing for Bobrovsky of just how it's not necessarily always lucky bounces for him. It's just when you are in positionally sound, you're even going to get those whistles where it's slightly under where you don't get a whistle right away too.
No, and he was on a heater tonight. It just didn't seem like anything was going to get past him. But if you look back to the Boston series and even the Rangers series, I mean, you could say that he was probably outplayed, but he gave the Panthers a chance to win every single game outside of maybe one or two of those games. So how can you say that he's not been a factor in these playoffs? I mean, he went head to head with Vasilevsky in the first round, won that. Second round, he had to go against Swayman. Swayman played probably the best that he's ever played, and Bobrovsky still came out on top because, again, he allows the team to rally around him and get a chance to win. So, if I were to pick any kind of goaltender right now in this series, and I mean, I know it's kind of easy,
Yeah.
but to say that, Bob could have a bad game, it could happen, but it doesn't mean that, he's a bad goalie or that, the team should, steer away from him and go to Stolarz because that's his net.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be his net until he can't play anymore. And I think he's deserved it. I mean, his contract is not worth it, in my opinion, and it will be solidified hopefully here in the next week and a half. But you can't take anything away from the guy right now. He's on top of his game.
Yeah, and credit to Stolarz, just the regular season and just how he's been able to, Bob, I believe Bob was only chased twice. I know one of them was Vancouver, on the top of my head, but Bob wasn't even chased much during the regular season, and also the fact that even with like maybe 2 or 3 day gaps during the regular season, you're able to schedule those days off where Bob is going a week without a start too, and just to keep it fresh. So even when a situation that arrives, just like this, it's all about remaining ready to, and just his routine of just being his stretches, his post game stuff too, and just keep, and even there was even a video of handing him the puck to put it on the board. Very, very stoic once again. He's just like, let's reset, get to game 2. That's the mindset that you want out of your goaltender too. So when it comes to, even if he knows it in his heart of hearts, hey, you guys won because of me. He won't say it out loud, obviously, but just knowing that it's a team effort, and the fact that for him, he's like, I got you're gonna have my back. I'm gonna have your back too. Give me some insurance, some run support, and I'll get it for you too. I mean, and listen, he had a shutout. I know regular season doesn't really mean anything neither, but he had a shutout against Edmonton too. So that was a little bit of what he could like look on too for as far as like what to look for when McDavid is going up the ice, and how when he cuts in and brings it back to his forehand, how he circles around to try to have that backdoor feed, which, man, the Panthers really defended that well. Aaron Ekblad, shout out to you. Gustav Forsling, shout out to you. Even if you were pinned in your own end, you found a way to still manage things throughout all of that when someone like McDavid was there. So that's another thing for that. So any final words before we get out of here on the night?
Yeah, so I had a thought on Anthony Stolarz, and this kind of goes back to the idea that I had about one game could change the course of a season. And this is me kind of harkening back to why Pittsburgh didn't make the playoffs last year. They lost against Chicago, and I'm still going to keep grinding on that. Think about it this way. If Anthony Stolarz didn't play as well as he did this season, Florida's not a division winner.
No. Look at game 82.
Exactly. So the fact is that the team rallied around him and that he has their buy-in, that he's got their back. Just shows that the team is put together in such a way that they're always going to be able to play for each other, and the fact that he was able to come in seamlessly and do that and contribute is amazing to see. So I just want to leave with that note, but before we get out of here, defense has to play much better. I do believe they will, and I think the forwards will definitely be more responsible. And so I don't think you're going to get quite as many breakaways in game 2, because I think they're going to fix that. So it'll be an exciting game 2. Who's going to win? Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. And just because you get rid of those breakaway opportunities and that doesn't necessarily always mean that you're gonna come out on the other end. It's just really the Panthers once again have to be opportunistic with their opportunities. But hey, gotta be very pleased that they in fact did with them. But also before we get out of here, shout out to the Florida Everblades for winning their 3rd straight Kelly Cup title. Congratulations to Brad Ralph, Mike Kelly, Jake Maurice, and everybody out in Estero, Florida, and doing it in comeback fashion, down 3-1. Scoring with less than 2 minutes left to force overtime, and then scoring with 3 minutes, just over 3 minutes in to the overtime period, and also clinching for the 3rd straight year at home too. So hockey is definitely here in Florida, and definitely truly on the map. And hey, 3 more wins for the Florida Panthers. So far, so good after game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show on this post-game edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Thank you for having me on, Armando. I know it's not our usual time, but you know what? I'm going to consider this a successful Fairbanks. What should we call it? Fiesta. We'll call that. On this Sunday. But you guys can follow me on X at Prudential0, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week
for game 3. That's when you guys will see Nick next. So thank you so much, Nick, and I will see you next week, my friend.
Thank you.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.